Hi, welcome to today's expert video series. I'm Simon Lilly, Director of Marketing for Sodexo Health and Care. Today I'm delighted to welcome a very special guest, Simon Corben, Director of NHS Estates and Facilities for NHS England. Simon's been in the role for just over 6 years now. Previous to that has worked in the private sector and advising the NHS. Simon, we're delighted to have you. Thank you for your time today.
Not at all.
So if I can start off first of all by, let's talk about the broader challenges of the NHS, huge A&E demand pressures, elective backlogs. What role can estates and facilities teams play in supporting the wider challenges that are facing the NHS?
The first thing is around what interventions can we make to the infrastructure to free up flow, to improve the way in which we deliver clinical services. So that's been a really core component in the last few months. You would have seen that we've introduced ambulance waits, discharge lounges, etc. across, just to help at both the front door and the back door. So they're the sort of the short-term fixes around capital interventions. In terms of other aspects, we need to understand or bring people to the understanding of what infrastructure failure, the effect that infrastructure failure has across providing those clinical services, so we can derive greater levels of investment. And then the final bit is, which has been one of the most warming parts of the sort of the output of the pandemic, is to see how both the profession, including our supply chain, have really stepped to the fore when it comes to oxygen safety, when it comes to cleanliness, when it comes to food provision, and indeed in delivering the Nightingales. It was a very proud moment for myself and the team just to see how both the in-house and out-house estates and facilities community came together and really drove to a common purpose, which was really fulfilling to see.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've talked about the kind of the wider pressures facing the NHS and our team support that. In terms of just the estates and facilities management teams, what are the core challenges that they're facing at the moment, and some of the solutions that you're starting to see emerge?
Yeah, so I always sort of do short-term, long-term in these sort of questions. So, I mean, long-term, age, condition, function, form of the estate is not as it should be. You know, we should be seeing a lot more patients out in primary care. There's a lot of reliance on the acute sites, and the acute sites have got serious issues around safety and age. So we're constantly battling against that. So long term, we've got to show our stakeholders, clinicians and managers how a better infrastructure out in the system can improve clinical throughput and indeed deliver a better point of care to the patients and the public. Short term, we've got to make sure we've got to keep the show on the road. We've got to make sure that the capital that we get, we invest appropriately into those areas that, as I said before, fail and stop clinical practice in its wake. And that's really important to us, to ensure that we reduce the amount of clinical stoppages as a result of infrastructure failure.
Talking about people, it's been about a year since the EFM Workforce Plan was published. Can you give us an update on progress and what the potential next phases of that are?
Yeah, well, I mean, what the workforce is, front and centre of everything that we do. There's the best part of 100,000 folk that work in estates and facilities, and that includes our supply chain as well. So, a huge amount of people in that space. The Workforce Action Plan is quite interesting in itself. It was initially, it started life as a workforce strategy. We said, no. It will be the action plan. We'll have 4 really clear things that we need to drive through that, and that's been really effective. And there's been some great things that have happened. The apprenticeship program that we did this year, I think we had something like 300 apprentices across the system last year. We're up to about 850, 900 now. So that's been a huge success. The recognition, the branding of estates and facilities, we've been lucky from the pandemic that we've raised our profile, but that continues to grow, and I think people really understand what we do, and we're doing a lot of exercise such as the chef program and other initiatives such as my portering. We've also still got quite a lot of work to do around our diversity, particularly at senior levels, and we're working with estate directors and other senior managers about how we can do that. We're looking to set a target to ensure that everybody meets that and then goes beyond it, and that's been successful here at NHS England, and we want to do the same across the system. So yeah, there are some green shoots, and it's definitely working effectively. I meet with the team every month. We measure ourselves against those core actions that we had, and I'm at this point, I'm happy in the way that we're seeing things progress.
And I think within Sodexo as an example, I think we've felt more engagement as we've come through the pandemic and out the other side. The engagement levels, the benefit of working with the commercial sector has obviously been recognised. Can you just tell us a little bit more, because the government have made it clear, and NHS England have made it clear that there is a role for outsourcing to support the NHS long-term plans. Tell us a bit more about your view on that and how it can help EFM teams going forward.
Yeah, I probably one of the most disappointing things I found at the start of the pandemic was there was a bit of them and us culture at some organisations, and we made a real point of stamping that out. I personally have come from the private sector, and having now worked in the public sector for several years, I recognise how difficult it is for all of us, and if we're not one team, one NHS, then we will fail. And after those initial hiccups in the pandemic, that was all put to one side, and the worth of our supply chain was staggering, and hugely grateful for everything that you all did. Going forward, I think we all need to work collectively and work out where the capability lies and where it sits and how appropriate it is. We're, as I said earlier, it's hard enough. There's not a huge amount of people in the industry, but we've all got a common objective. And if there's opportunities for supply chains to widen their reach across ICSs, then fully support that. Equally, I'd fully support a very capable NHS team that we're looking to do the same. I think there lies the opportunities for both the private and the public sector to expand services. Yeah.
We've seen with our clients a need for innovation, a desire for innovation from its partners, and also a desire for more data. Talk us through how you see data playing an increasing role within estates and FM going forward.
Well, it's massive, isn't it? And I think that comes with an elemental dose of frustration as well. I think we've all talked about the digitalisation for a long time, and it's always difficult until you see proof of concept. And we as a team have split it into 3 areas, really. So you've got asset management, so we just want to get better at understanding our portfolio, and we're using products to do that, and the ICS estate strategies will be a cornerstone of that particular work stream. Capital delivery, we've got a myriad of different ways of reporting capital, and we're looking to roll out a national platform for that. And then finally, the bit that you guys will be clearly interested in is around operational digitalisation of the estate. And we've got so many different platforms out there at the moment being used and not used to their full extent. I was at a trust the other day where they hadn't even turned on one application that they were paying a licence for each and every year. And there's some really good things that we can get out of that. We can get improved oversight, we can get improved understanding of the complications we've got, but we can have improved productivity as a result of that. And it's the work stream that we've got going on in there is really looking at what's out in the market, and particularly working with organisations such as yourself who have moved this agenda significantly further than the NHS, because you have that overview of several different portfolios, and how can we use that to improve customer services, from be it parking, whether it be food provision, whether it be cleaning, whether it be inpatient entertainment. Those are the areas that we really need to get into, along with that oversight and assurance. I mean, I was asked this question about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and someone said, and it was from a FM provider, and I said, I honestly think that going forward we will be looking at that platform that you bring as organisations before we start looking at the services that you offer. I think that is where I see operational digitalisation coming, is organisations such as Sodexo saying, well, you buy our platform, we'll give you all this insight and we'll deliver the service that responds to that platform. I think that will be a core component of letting facilities management contracts going forward.
I finished off with one final question around what the future looks like. You started there to paint a picture of what part of the future could look like. But 5 to 10 years on, what would estates and FM look like in hospitals?
So again, sort of breaking that down into the sort of the core components, which would be capital, operational, and then workforce. From a capital point of view, I'd like ICSs all to have robust 5 to 10 year capital programs that allow them to react very quickly to capital settlements in a way that allows us to deploy that capital effectively, not only to meet the clinical need, but also to address the backlog. Too often we're addressing the clinical need and leaving the infrastructure behind, which then fails, that then means that the benefits of that clinical redevelopment don't stack up. To see a steady increase in CDEL, which is our capital limits, that needs to step up significantly to match our peers out in the rest of the world, and to get the programmes such as the new hospital programme into a steady footing, that it can start rolling out repeatable hospitals where indeed it's appropriate. So that's where I see capital. In terms of operational, I think a far improved patient and staff experience. I think digital plays a massive part in that. I mentioned parking, I mentioned entertainment, I mentioned food provision. I'd really like us to be shining in that space and really being at the forefront of technology and driving that forward. But I'd also want us to see better compliance in that space as well around some of the shortfalls that we've got across that infrastructure failure. So really understanding and being able to articulate the message that we need investment on. And then finally workforce, and just to take where we are today and just raise it another level. Make sure that we're at the table having those discussions linked in at the appropriate time. Make sure that we as the NHS are the employer of choice. When kids are coming out of school, what's the employer to go to? Many cities, the hospital is the biggest employer of estates and facilities, or indeed many services. And being able to articulate that career path, I think, is really important for us and for people to be proud of working for their local organisation. And that doesn't mean being proud of working for the NHS in that local organisation. It's about being proud of working for that provider who provides services to the NHS. So just breaking down those barriers, I think, is really important. So, and just a truly diverse and energetic workforce would be fantastic, and not a recruitment gap that we've got at the moment.
Simon, thank you so much for your time. I mean, a lot of challenges, but also you mentioned there a huge amount of opportunities in the next few years, and we certainly look forward to being by your side and playing a part in that journey. So thank you for your time.
Pleasure. It's an exciting time, and it's really great to do interviews like this, so thank you.